Everyone thought the sports ground was neutral territory until HOA Karen showed up and turned a friendly soccer match into a battlefield of rules, outrage, and public embarrassment that the whole town would remember. If you've ever dealt with a power-tripping HOA president or love seeing justice unfold in real time, don't scroll away because this story ends with a takedown you won't believe. Subscribe to Sham Stories for more unbelievable neighborhood drama just like this. It all began on a bright Saturday morning in the quiet suburb of Willow Ridge, a community of manicured lawns, HOA enforced mailbox heights, and picture-perfect sidewalks. The Willow Ridge Park sat just outside the gates of the HOA-managed neighborhood, but that didn't stop Karen Mitchell, the notorious president of the Willow Ridge HOA, from thinking she had every right to enforce her beloved community standards there too. The park's main field had recently been adopted by local kids and parents as the go-to weekend hangout. It had become a small haven where neighborhood kids played soccer. Parents cheered from lawn chairs, and the occasional lemonade stand made a few dollars. But Karen didn't like the noise, the clutter, or the fact that people were using the park without what she called event clearance. She had complained to the city council multiple times, claiming the sports field was being abused by unsupervised minors and that it encouraged disorder. But the city, having no legal obligation to follow HOA demands, ignored her. That Saturday morning, Karen rolled up in her beige SUV, parked diagonally across two spots closest to the field, and stormed toward the soccer match already in full swing. Parents lined the sidelines, some with coolers and snacks, others chatting casually while their kids played a relaxed but spirited game of soccer. Karen, with her clipboard in one hand and her phone in the other, cut across the middle of the field, ignoring the running kids. One of them tripped, trying to dodge her, falling into the grass. It was the first time people noticed her, and it wouldn't be the last. She reached the sideline and stood directly in front of the parents, her voice booming with the authority only she believed she had. This field is being used without HOA registration. None of this was approved. You're in violation of several community ordinances regarding organized events, sound disturbance, and unsupervised gatherings. Parents blinked, confused. A man named Jeremy, one of the soccer dads who coordinated the weekend matches, stepped forward. "Ma'am, this is a public park. The HOA doesn't control it. We're just letting our kids play." Karen tightened her grip on her clipboard. "I spoke to the city. They haven't responded yet, which means this area is pending enforcement jurisdiction. Until that's resolved, HOA protocol applies. This match is over. Everyone needs to clear the field." A woman from the sidelines, Maria Lopez, stood up with her hands on her hips. "Karen, you're not a cop. You're not even in charge here. Is a park, not your personal chessboard." The crowd murmured in agreement. Karen began recording with her phone, narrating to no one in particular. "As president of the Willow Ridge HOA, I am documenting illegal public gathering and potential safety violations. Participants have refused to disperse." Another father, Kyle, laughed out loud. "Lady, go home. You're embarrassing yourself." Karen's face turned crimson. She called the non-emergency police line. When the dispatcher politely explained that no laws were being broken, Karen insisted that they send someone to help her restore order. By now, half the kids had stopped playing, crowding near their parents. Phones were out, filming. Karen remained defiant, walking along the sidelines, writing what she claimed were names and violations on her clipboard. Jeremy, trying to keep things civil, asked everyone to calm down and suggested taking a break while they waited for the police to arrive, just to avoid further escalation. Karen smirked, thinking she'd won. But when the officers showed up 20 minutes later, they didn't exactly come to her rescue. After speaking to multiple parents watching the video footage and reviewing Karen's long-winded complaint, the officer pulled her aside. "Ma'am, this is a public park. You're not in charge here, and unless someone is breaking the law, you need to stop interfering." Karen tried to argue. She waved her clipboard. She even tried to quote HOA charter rules. The officer shook his head. "This is city property. Your HOA rules don't apply here. If you continue to harass these people, you could be cited for public nuisance or disorderly conduct. That moment was caught on video from multiple angles. Karen's face twisted in disbelief. She stammered, tried to pivot the conversation, but the officer had already walked away. Cheers erupted from the parents. Kids went back to the field, and Karen, seething, stormed back to her SUV, but not before issuing one final threat. "This isn't over. I will be filing formal reports. You'll all hear from the board." She sped away, tires screeching slightly, unaware that her tantrum had already gone viral online. By nightfall, the video titled HOA Karen Tries to Shut Down. Kids' soccer game gets owned by police had over 50,000 views. And it wasn't just going viral, it was sparking a movement within Willow Ridge. For the first time, people were seriously questioning why one woman had been allowed to wield so much power for so long. And while Karen plotted her next move, the community began planning theirs. Because what happened on the field that day wasn't just a clash, it was the start of something much bigger. Karen spent the following week working overtime to reclaim the control she felt slipping through her fingers. The viral video didn't just spark embarrassment, it lit a fire under her. She doubled down, flooding the HOA email list with newsletters, updates, and what she called disciplinary intentions aimed at specific residents. She claimed had encouraged disorderly behavior at the park, but no one responded the way she expected. The board went quiet. Neighbors stopped replying to her long-winded bulletins. And at the next monthly HOA meeting, Karen walked into the clubhouse to find less than 10 people seated, most of them staring at their phones or whispering to one another. She expected support. She got silence. When she opened the meeting, by addressing the park incident and accusing Jeremy and Maria by name of violating HOA policy, Irene, the treasurer, and a long-standing but neutral member, politely interrupted her. "Karen, we've received multiple complaints about your actions at the park. You don't have authority there. Let's move on." Karen tried to push back, but Irene stood firm. For the first time in years, someone in the boardroom had dared to contradict her publicly, and it wouldn't be the last. The very next weekend, the kids' soccer games resumed, this time with more families, more food tents, and even a couple of lawn speakers playing music. It looked like a neighborhood block party had merged with a soccer tournament, and it was glorious. Karen watched from her SUV, parked just outside the lot, gripping her steering wheel as laughter and cheers echoed through the air. Her phone buzzed non-stop with HOA notices she'd triggered, fines for trash bins left out too long, minor lawn overgrowth, and excessive noise pollution reports, all aimed at the parents attending the event. But the community no longer flinched. Most of them began ignoring her emails altogether. Some blocked her number. Others, like Lisa Rollins, a mother of two, began openly campaigning for Karen's removal. Lisa started a petition to host a vote of no confidence, a rarely used clause. It's buried in the HOA charter that required 60% of the resident support to remove an acting board member. Within 3 days, the petition had over 120 signatures. Karen was furious. She accused Lisa of defamation, of spreading lies, and of inciting rebellion. But the more she spoke, the more she revealed the extent of her paranoia. Karen began showing up at residents' homes, unannounced, to discuss policy. She stood on doorsteps ranting about neighborhood standards and the risk of moral collapse. One resident recorded her yelling through their Ring doorbell at 7 a.m., accusing them of treason for attending a soccer game. The video went viral, just like the first one. By the end of the week, local news outlets picked up the story. A segment aired on the 6 o'clock news. Local HOA president accused of harassment over kids' soccer game. The anchor read Karen's full quote from one of her emails: "Without strong leadership, this community will descend into chaos. Today it's soccer, tomorrow it's anarchy." The clip was shared thousands of times. The HOA board could no longer stay quiet. Irene called an emergency meeting with just the board members, no residents. Karen arrived 10 minutes early, expecting to rally them to her side. Instead, she was met with a printed list of complaints, signed by every other board member, citing misconduct, misuse of authority, and violation of member privacy. Karen refused to step down. She accused them of being cowards, traitors, and even hinted that she would sue the HOA if they tried to vote her out. But the board didn't need her permission. Irene invoked an emergency provision in the bylaws to temporarily suspend Karen's voting privileges until a full community referendum could be held. Karen stormed out, not before threatening to expose everyone's secrets in what she referred to as her HOA integrity archive. The community was divided, but not in the way Karen hoped. Most were united against her. The soccer families became a symbol of resistance, and more neighbors came to the games, even those without kids. It wasn't just about sports anymore. It was about standing up against fear-based leadership. Karen began escalating. She printed dozens of flyers accusing Lisa and Jeremy of colluding to commercialize the park, a baseless claim that no one believed. She posted the flyers on mailboxes, bus stops, and even cars parked outside the field. That backfired. One morning, someone caught her on camera taping a flyer to the windshield of a parked police cruiser. The officer confronted her and Karen. Trying to spin the story, claimed the entire neighborhood had become infiltrated by non-compliant radicals. She was issued a written warning for misuse of public signage. Her HOA authority, already suspended, was now a joke. That same weekend, the biggest soccer event yet was held. Lisa had coordinated with a local taco truck, and over 200 people showed up. Karen drove by 3 times but didn't stop. She sat parked down the road, binoculars in hand, muttering to herself about the fall of civilization. But inside the park, the vibe was joyous. Residents mingled, kids played, small band played music near the basketball court, and at the heart of it all was a growing belief that the HOA didn't have to be feared. That community didn't come from rules, it came from connection. Lisa stood next to Irene at the snack table, watching it all unfold. "We've got the numbers," she said. "We're going to vote her out. For good." Irene nodded. "Let's make sure it sticks." They raised their water bottles in a quiet toast, unaware that Karen had filed a 14-page complaint with the city just that morning, but it wouldn't matter. Because the next phase of this neighborhood war wasn't going to be fought with clipboards or fines, it was going to be decided by the people, and their decision was already forming, loud, clear, and unstoppable. Karen's last-ditch effort to hold on to power was both desperate and theatrical. Just days after submitting her 14-page complaint to the city, she orchestrated what she referred to as a community integrity forum in the Willow Ridge clubhouse. She posted formal invitations in every mailbox, declaring the event mandatory and promising to reveal disturbing truths about the so-called rebellion brewing within the neighborhood. But when Saturday arrived, less than a dozen people showed up, most of them longtime Karen loyalists who were more curious than committed. The rest of the community was gathered once again at the park, where another soccer tournament was underway, complete with music, food trucks, and now a rotating schedule of cleanup crews and volunteers, organized by Lisa and Irene, inside the clubhouse. Karen stood at a podium in front of a projection screen, surrounded by piles of printed emails, flyers, and photographs. She began reading off complaints, each more absurd than the last, alleging Lisa had misused HOA funds for personal pizza parties, accusing Jeremy of weaponizing sports, and suggesting Irene was part of a shadow board designed to usurp her rightful authority. When one attendee dared to question the validity of her claims, Karen shouted them down, accusing them of being indoctrinated by the soccer cult. The room cleared out quickly after that. Karen was left alone, with her stack of grievances and her voice echoing off empty chairs. Meanwhile, at the park, something incredible happened. A local reporter who had covered the earlier incident returned to interview Lisa. The piece aired that night, framing the Willow Ridge community as a case study in grassroots resistance to unchecked HOA power. The segment showed clips of children laughing, neighbors hugging, and volunteers working together. It ended with Lisa saying, "We just want to live in peace. Rules are fine, but when they become weapons, the community suffers." That one clip captured everything the residents felt but hadn't been able to say for years. It went viral. Again, the referendum vote was held the following Wednesday. Turnout was overwhelming. Nearly every eligible household voted. When the final count came in, over 85% voted to permanently remove Karen from the board. It was a landslide. Irene, now acting president, delivered the official letter of dismissal to Karen's doorstep the next morning. Karen didn't answer. Instead, the envelope sat untouched for 2 days before disappearing. Karen vanished from community life entirely. Her house grew quiet, her car unseen. Rumors swirled that she was planning to move, but no listing ever appeared. Some believed she was waiting for the right moment to return with a legal counterstrike. Others joked she was probably buried under piles of her own printed rules and citations. But life in Willow Ridge moved on without her. The park became a symbol of what the neighborhood could be when fear was replaced with joy. Kids played late into the evening. Residents organized yoga mornings and chess nights. New faces joined the HOA board, people with kids with open minds and with no clipboards. Lisa declined to run for office, choosing instead to continue volunteering. As a community events coordinator, Jeremy took over organizing weekend games. Irene focused on rewriting the HOA charter to prevent any one person from hoarding power again. As for Karen, her name slowly faded from conversations. But the lessons she left behind lingered. The community had learned how dangerous silence could be, how unchecked power didn't just oppress, it isolated, and how one woman's obsession with control had nearly destroyed everything they loved. One quiet morning, nearly 3 months after the vote, Karen's SUV was seen leaving her driveway packed to the brim. No one came to say goodbye. No one waved. The house went on the market the following week. It sold quickly. No mention of the past rain in the listing. The new owners were a young couple with 2 kids and a dog. On their first Saturday in Willow Ridge, they brought folding chairs to the park and introduced themselves. They were welcomed with lemonade, smiles, and laughter. The park pulsed with life again, and this time, no one stood at the edge with a clipboard. No one demanded silence. If you believe neighborhoods should be built on trust, not fear, and that no single person should ever hold a community hostage with a list of rules, then subscribe to Sham Stories for more powerful true-life drama that proves even the loudest voices can be silenced by unity. Just when the neighborhood began settling into a new normal, and life without Karen felt like a breath of fresh air, a surprising ripple threatened to disturb the peace once more. But this time, it didn't come from Karen directly. About 6 weeks after her quiet departure, a letter arrived at the HOA office from a legal firm representing her. It was terse, formal, and very Karen. A cease and desist demanding the HOA board retract its vote of dismissal and issue a formal public apology for what she called character assassination and unlawful removal. At first, Irene laughed. Lisa shook her head. But after reviewing it with the HOA's attorney, they realized it wasn't an empty threat. Karen had filed a civil complaint in small claims court, not for reinstatement, but for damages. She was suing the HOA for $10,000 in reputational harm and legal costs. The news spread quickly through the community, and the general reaction wasn't fear or concern, it was outrage. Parents, neighbors, and former board members gathered for an emergency town hall at the park, under string lights and lawn chairs. One father shouted, "This woman has the nerve to sue us after everything she did." The meeting turned into a rally. Residents offered to crowdfund legal support. Others offered testimonies and documentation. Even the city council sent a letter in support of the HOA's actions. What Karen didn't expect was that by dragging the matter into the open again, she was giving the community one last chance to rally, not in anger, but in defiance of everything she stood for. The court hearing date was set 3 weeks out. In that time, Lisa and Irene worked with pro bono legal help, gathering incident reports, testimonials, videos, and signed statements. On the morning of the hearing, over 30 residents showed up at the courthouse wearing matching shirts that read "We are Willow Ridge." The judge, clearly surprised by the public attention, allowed only key individuals into the courtroom. But the message was clear. This wasn't just a legal case. It was a symbolic one. Karen appeared in court flanked by 2 attorneys. She wore a navy blue pantsuit and brought her infamous clipboard as evidence. When asked to testify, she launched into a detailed account of her service, claiming she had maintained order, preserved property values, and upheld moral standards. Then she accused the board of organizing a smear campaign to liberate themselves from accountability. When it was Lisa's turn to speak, she remained calm and concise. She recounted the timeline of events, the harassment, the public confrontations, and Karen's long-standing misuse of authority. Irene followed, reading directly from the HOA charter and citing multiple rule violations Karen had committed without permission, without board consensus, and without legal jurisdiction. But the most powerful moment came when Jeremy played the original video, the one of the police officer telling Karen, "You're not in charge here." It echoed through the quiet courtroom. The judge, a seasoned woman in her 60s, leaned forward. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said gently, "sometimes leadership means listening. From everything I've heard, you didn't lead, you ruled. This isn't a monarchy, it's a neighborhood." Karen sat stiffly, lips pursed, but said nothing. The judge dismissed the case. Not only that, she awarded court costs to the HOA, ordering Karen to pay $500 to cover administrative time and fees. Outside the courthouse, cheers erupted. Residents clapped, hugged, and took photos. The story was picked up by the local news again, this time under the headline, "HOA Karen defeated in court by her own community." The next weekend, Willow Ridge threw a block party, not just a casual get-together, a full-blown celebration. There was a bounce house, 2 food trucks, a local band, and even a face-painting booth. A handmade banner stretched across the entrance to the park, "Free to play, free to live." Lisa gave a short speech. "We didn't fight for control. We fought to be left alone, and we won." Irene announced the finalization of new HOA amendments that included stricter term limits, required transparency on all spending, and a formal recall procedure that could be triggered by residents, not just board votes. Jeremy handed out soccer schedules for the upcoming season and received a standing ovation. As dusk settled and the fairy lights flickered across the field, neighbors danced, children played tag, and someone started a group photo by the basketball court. In the middle of all the joy, Lisa looked around and whispered to herself, "We made it." There was no sign of Karen. Her house had officially sold. The new family had already replaced the mailbox she once deemed 3 inches too high. In a poetic twist, the dad now organized pickleball nights on the old tennis courts another place. Karen once tried to ban sports from after 6 p.m. The legend of Karen remained only in stories, told with humor and disbelief around fire pits and cookouts. But her downfall served a greater purpose. It taught Willow Ridge that the spirit of a neighborhood was stronger than any HOA by law, that when people stood together, even the most intimidating voices could be quieted, and that no amount of clipboards, fines, or legal threats could stop a park full of children from laughing. If you've ever faced injustice, bullying, or someone who thought power made them untouchable, let this story remind you, community always wins. And if you want more stories like this, real battles, real drama, and real people standing up for what's right, then don't forget to subscribe to Sham Stories, where the fight for fairness never stops.